I have my vicious chihuahua right behind me. He may be making growling noises because he's angry at the maids in the hotel room. Listen, in the event, I'll be right back. Background noises are important in hotel rooms, I've learned. Yesterday, I was talking about something that hit a nerve with people, so I just want to talk about it again because I do think it's big. And that is the exercise. I have called it shadow inquiry before. I think I've done a couple videos on it, but every time I introduce it to someone in session or on video, I get people very often saying, wow, that's very direct and very powerful. So why not share it, right? Um, so we all have Hitler and Gandhi within us. Is a phrase that I heard around shadow work. Shadow work, I don't know if you know what I mean by that, like the 3-2-1 process, Ken Wilber's shadow work. If you haven't learned about shadow work, we do it as facilitators. We have permission directly from Ken Wilber, actually, to use that, although we don't think we needed it. But the reason we got permission, or I got permission, was because it's very powerful work. It's not inquiry. In the sense it's not deconstructive. So shadow work is about owning something that you're projecting onto someone else. So it's ego work. It's like your ego got split off so that we see ourselves as good or whatever, and then bad or some other trait we project onto other people as a way to bolster the kind of the false notion that we're good. False meaning that, of course, that's not the totality of what we are, but we cling to certain things and we disown other things that are painful or scary. And when we disown them and repress them, these traits or whatever, they magically start showing up in other people. And then we get irritated with those people because they have that trait. So we're boxing our own shadows. So re-owning that is shadow work. So that projection that you're spinning out or throwing out that way, it's a process of owning that. Um, but that's not deconstructive. So inquiry is when then you go and then you sort of deconstruct that to see, well, even now that I've owned that shadow, that thing that I was pushing out on someone else, that's not ultimately me either. So let me give you a real quick example because I'm not going to do shadow work today. I'm going to show you something different. But I think it's important to understand the context of where this comes from. Um, so an example would be I'm let's say this belief that I'm not very self-centered here. And so then therefore, so everyone has that in them. In fact, if you have any semblance of ego, that's self-centeredness or narcissism or whatever. But we deny these traits in ourselves. So imagine I went around and I thinking to myself, I'm not self-centered. I don't have a self-centered bone in my body, but other people are. And I can see them everywhere. They're very self-centered on social media, and God, the world is self-centered. See, so what's going on there is most likely a shadow because it's like what Ken Wilber says is, okay, so what? There are people out there that are self-centered. Why does it bother you so much? Meaning the person with the shadow. And when it bothers us a lot is when it indicates there might be a shadow. So the process of the shadow work is to dialogue and then re-own that trait. So then in the end, you're saying, I am self-centered. And but you can see then that there's nothing in that then asks you to witness anything because it's deconstructive ego work. Shadow work is now, once you own that, I'm self centered, that's just a matter of no longer pushing it out on somebody else. Because it's really painful to shadow box something that you actually have and not see it. So the re-owning is very valuable. And at the end of that process, you should feel something like, okay, I am self centered and that's fine. So the idea with shadow work is that when you own everything, you come to realize as people go deep in shadow work that we all have a Hitler and a Gandhi within us, meaning we all have the full spectrum of extremes, the full spectrum of traits, everything. like bar none. So whatever we're boxing or bothered by out there really is just something we haven't owned yet. Now, once you own it, this is very wise of Ken because he allows for the relative. Like he doesn't try to non-dual everything away. And when you own something, like, okay, I am self-centered. Um, see, where was I going with this? I'm getting to my real point in a second. When you own something, then you do not go around, um, you don't go around dismissing other people's behavior. So, for example, people may still be self-centered. You don't have to dismiss that. It just doesn't bother you as much because you owned it within yourself. And that's as far as shadow work goes, at least that process. Inquiry, as we know, is more deconstructive. It's not about owning, there's a little bit of that there, but it's more about seeing that when you own something or identified with it, actually, when you believe that you are it, and in the case of shadow work, after you've owned it, then you still believe something that isn't ultimately true. No matter where you land on a thought or a story, after shadow work, whatever, you still have this program, this story. Inquiry deconstructs that and shows you that you're not that. Okay. Shadow inquiry is something else. It's like a hybrid of the two. And I was explaining it yesterday, so just sit with me for a second because if if this is a wise insight that we all have Hitler and Gandhi within us, if those who have gone deep have realized that, then maybe we ought to be looking at that, right? So here's one way to start doing it. And this is not directly a shadow, but we do get concerned about what other people think. Let's just start there. Other people. I once had a band, a rock band. I was the lead singer of 1990 to like 92 during the alternative music period, and the band's name was Other People. And I never knew why I named my band that, except for that as I got older and got into spirituality, I realized that I don't trust other people. And this thing about other people, I love how Eckhart Tolle talks about it, like those damn others, being tortured by that. Now, what if you weren't tortured, for example, by what other people think? What if you just stopped being tortured by that? Wouldn't that be freeing? The way that I stumbled on this is that it started with sessions where I saw how people internalized or downloaded their parents' judgments of them. And this is perhaps where what other people think is most important is your parents. So we grow up, as we know, with these deficiency stories like, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable. And we build that because, in part, we think we know what our parents are thinking about us. The judgments, sometimes they say it, sometimes we think they're thinking it. And so we build our personality in a sense to get their love and attention and approval, right? And we feel like we fall short, so we walk away or we come into adulthood feeling deficient, like there's something fundamentally wrong. And that voice of mom or dad runs, right? And not necessarily in the background, it just runs. It becomes the commentary or the soundtrack, if you will, of our lives. And people are tortured by that well into their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Mom and dad can be both past and doesn't matter. The way that the scripts run, they're the same, even when your parents pass. Still, for example, how many men and women I've met who are still trying to make dad proud, even though dad is buried. But in their mind, the script says, I'm just not good enough. I have to make dad proud. In inquiry, when I just simply started to ask people, look at dad. What is he thinking about you? What do you think that he's thinking? Look at his mouth. What does it seem like he wants to say? Look at his mind. What is he thinking? And then here it comes. So, I could just go through examples of it. Let's say dad thinks I'm never going to make it in this world. So dad would say that in the inquiry, you would see dad say that in like second person, like, you. You're never going to make it, boy. So, how do you contend with something like that? Something coming from the outside. It's not even your own thought, seemingly, although it really is in the end, but it seems like it comes from somebody else. And so, like shadows, you're focused on the other. They're doing something, and like you haven't owned it yet on your side. So it's like, how do you, and people even say that, like, how do I witness someone else's thought? Well, ultimately, there are no selves. There's just awareness and thoughts coming up, but they tell the story, don't they, of separate selves. Here's the shadow inquiry. Whenever you see what dad is saying, like, you're never going to make it, boy, take it out of second or third person, put it in first person, and own it, but own it within awareness. So instead of dialoguing or cognitively coming to this, you would simply say, I'm never going to make it in this world. Now, here's the thing, you don't just think it, right? You don't try to believe that. What you do is you just let that thought sit in awareness and you observe that. Because all of your life, if you notice, you've been trying to squirm out of the feeling that that might bring or that that brings. This is why dad's judgment is so important, is because it might make you feel something, right? And I'm no different. I mean, people who've judged me where I haven't owned it and I haven't seen through it, it lands and then it makes me feel something. And so that's where our defense comes up. Because as we try something on, oh, I'm not going to make it in the world, dad's saying this. That gets to our sense of self, so we have to attack. We have to defend that sense of self, and you can feel the energy coming up. Many, many arguments start and continue this way by defending a perceived sense of self. And to me, through the years, I just saw it boil down to the simple fact of not allowing yourself to feel that. So, what if you just did this? Dad thinks I'm not going to make it in the world. First person, I'm not going to make it in the world. Now you're just observing the thoughts, literally the words spelled out somewhere or coming through as a sound. But you're standing as awareness and just literally letting it be seen continuously. And in letting it be seen, the feeling or even the sensation can come to the surface, the thing you didn't want to feel. So you just sit with it. And I'm telling you guys, it can be uncomfortable, but that's why you've avoided it, right? So if it's uncomfortable, you're right on spot because that shows you, oh, I didn't want to feel this. So you sit with it and observing the thought and staying with the thought, it pulls the feeling up and can help the feeling move out or dissolve by observing the thought because the thought is Velcro to something in the body. So you sit with that. It's like just putting a hat on that you haven't wanted to put on, but the hat is a set of words. I'm never going to make it in this world. You're observing directly from awareness. And then ask, at some point when the feeling is up, don't ask this until the feeling of the sensation is on the surface. But once it is, and you have these words, I'm never going to make it in the world, just ask, are those words the awareness that's looking? I said this yesterday too, but just go with me here. This is a rough explanation. The awareness, so to speak, is what's looking. This is my hands are indicating that the awareness is what is looking. That's its function. That's what it is, what it does. The words appear in that. They're not aware. The words themselves are not aware of anything. The words are simply appearing in awareness. And yet from that perspective of seeing that, they are not the seeing itself. They are not what's looking. So when you say, are those words the awareness that's looking, there can be an unhooking from that identification with that phrase. But but you just continue to rest with it anyway, resting with the words and the feeling, now being more unhooked, at least the words, and you stay with it, the feeling and the words, until it comes to rest completely, like even if it takes a while. It may be more words come up and you have to be with that, but that's good. Just be with it. But eventually, as that comes to quiet, comes to rest, take a deliberate moment of awareness then as this phrase falls away to recognize that you're not that. So you witnessed something that you had been pushing away. You witnessed it, you felt it, but as that fell away, you see that you're not it. So that you don't truly begin telling that story. Just doing work here to get clear, to be clear, to live clear. So when it falls away, a deliberate moment of resting aware without that thought, just a moment. And that helps the body settle or whatever else. And then the way that you test this out is just look back at dad or whoever else and say, okay, I don't care what dad thinks. I don't care what dad thinks about me. You have to be careful because have you ever heard people say, well, I don't care what they think? But you know that because they said that, they actually do care. It's what Adyashanti said once. He said, like, if you have to tell me that I trust you, then you don't, probably. So you have to be careful of the voice that comes up and says, yeah, I don't care, because that can be like a defense mechanism. Open yourself up to the earnest and honest answer or response when you say, I don't care what dad thinks. Trust your body. And then if you feel that, like, yes, I do, then find out what he thinks. There's more there, what you think he thinks, or she, or whoever. So again, looking at dad, what is he thinking? Is he thinking about me? Hmm, that I'm a worthless piece of shit. Doesn't even matter whether he said that or not. If I believe that he thought it, that's enough. So again, it's in like second person. He's saying, you're a worthless piece of shit in my consciousness. First person, I'm a worthless piece of shit. Remember, we all have Hitler and Gandhi within us. So to the extent you're pushing something like that away, ego does that. So putting those words in first person, right? I'm a worthless piece of shit. Not to believe them, but to see them. But even more than that, to feel what it is you want to feel. You just sit there and like burn in it. There's the words. Even start with the sense that this is true. It doesn't have to be a thought that you reinforce like this is true, this is true, this is true. But and by saying, I think Darby and Dan, facilitators, came to me with this, and I saw how important it was. That sometimes, in order not to squirm out of something, we have to just assume that it's true. Because if we start arguing with it immediately, that's us trying to squirm out to not feel something. Follow me? So again, you just sit with it. Nothing new here. It's the same thing each time, but you're observing just that thought. If other thoughts come in, allow them to come in, but be careful with images and memories because a lot of times when you're looking at words like I'm a worthless piece of shit, what our consciousness does is it gives memories of instances where that's proven. Like, oh, yeah, third grade memory proves that I'm a worthless piece of shit because I came home and dad said I did awful on a test. Okay, there's that. But see, that memory just proves the original program. I'm a worthless piece of shit. And maybe another memory pops up while you're looking at these words. 12th grade, dad said this to me. All this stuff starts popping up. But you have to be careful because really all of those images, or many of them, if not all, if you'll look, they're actually just saying the same thing. That dad thinks I'm a worthless piece of shit. And you have to be careful in inquiry. If you don't notice that, you'll be pulled into each one, which is fine. But once you get pulled into one and you ask, what does it mean about me? You get something like this, the original program again. Oh, I'm a worthless piece of shit. Thank you, memory, for reinforcing what I'm already looking at here. So just look at for a second and watch for this in inquiry. You're looking at the words, I'm a worthless piece of shit. Memories pop up. You feel drawn to them. But this is how consciousness proves things and makes things seem real. Like with a set of words, it starts putting up photos. It's literally like a show, a game, an illusion, just showing you memories to prove and to distract your attention from witnessing the program. It's trying to prove it. It's there, it's there, it's there. See, you really are a worthless piece of shit. Look, what I'm saying is notice that most of those memories are just reinforcing the same program. Observe the memories, acknowledge briefly, come back to the main program. All those memories mean I'm a worthless piece of shit. Stay with that because that's where the feeling is going to be directly on the program. Now, sometimes other words come up, right? It's not images, it could be words. Notice that the words essentially are trying to prove the same thing, though. So it's like you get the main program, I'm a worthless piece of shit, and other words come in. Yes, you really are. Um, Dad really believed that. And by the way, you're failing at your job. See? So it's trying to prove it. Ego likes to prove its suffering in different ways. And if you're not aware of that mechanism, you can get flooded by it. So what I say to people is look, stay with one thought at a time if you can. If others come in, if they don't have the power and the strength of the first thought, then just briefly notice them, come back to the original. But frankly, it doesn't even matter whether a bunch come in because we actually invite that to happen with words by reversing things. So when we reverse, one thing you can do when the words are up here is if you want to go deeper, just reverse that. Say, I'm not a worthless piece of shit, and let your consciousness object. And that's when you might see like a series of words or phrases come in. And that's exactly what you want to happen. So you can see these. The issue is just observe each one. Let each one be as it is. Let things slow down and really be with each thing and letting each thought fall away. And then a deliberate moment of awareness as a thought falls away. The more I do this work, the more I see how important that is. Taking that deliberate moment, that short moment of awareness when something falls away, because it's showing you the insight is as painful as that was, that's not what I am, because that fell away. And I, meaning awareness, still here. In any event, if other things come up, let them come up and be with each one. Words. They're all trying to prove the original program, right? Which is I'm a worthless piece of shit. So just observe and allow each one of them. By allowing each one of them, you're allowing the Hitler in you to be fully seen, but also to fall away. When I say Hitler, I mean something that you didn't want to look at, that you didn't want to own, and now you're owning it and observing it and letting it dissolve. What else could you possibly need to help you with judgments of others? Because this is so direct. It's like you just own it, witness it, it falls away. Even if more things come up, I've shown you how to be with that. And all as these things are coming up, these other words, you'll feel the emotions and sensations that come with each one. So that gets included in the seeing, and each emotion will get to come to rest, where you take that moment of awareness after a feeling even comes to rest. This is what I'm seeing is that we talk in non-duality about words, pictures, feelings, sensations coming and going to or within awareness. But sometimes in inquiry, we don't take, I don't know, we don't take the care to recognize that that is what's happening. So, in other words, words will be coming up one after the other, and there's just no space between them. I found so helpful to come to that space of awareness again between each thing, and that includes feelings. Because sometimes words or an image brings a very strong feeling, and let's say the words fall away, but you're still feeling that. It feels like it's lodged somewhere in the body. Rest with that and let that feeling be as it is. By letting it be as it is, it may just fall away, in which case you take that moment of awareness without that feeling, just to recognize that as painful as it was, it's not what you are. It's something coming and going within you. But if you don't stop and just take that moment of rest after the feeling goes away, you may not have that insight in the same way because the feeling is kind of still there, but you ignore it in order to go back into inquiry, which just conjures up the feeling again. And then you discuss continuous feeling, continuous words. And you can see then that there's no recognition of just the awareness without all that. There's a lot of that. And that's where that identification comes in. Jumping from one set of words to the next, to another picture, to another, keeping the dream alive. Dream of ego. This is very powerful, so it doesn't matter what someone calls you. And frankly, the worst names sometimes bring the biggest freedom. The worst names that you could be called. For example, um, so what are some really horrible things you've been called? This was really good for me dealing with just homophobia growing up because I had a few of these instances. I apologize, guys. I have to check my time for sessions here. When I grew up, I didn't know how to contend with the fact that these faceless strangers out there wanted me to burn in hell. Watching TV as a little kid, very impressionable. You're going to have your own story here. I'm just telling you how powerful this can be on the worst kinds of judgments. It doesn't matter. In fact, the worst ones are even better. So when you're a little kid and you take in things like that, just seeing fags going to burn in hell, you're a freak of nature, whatever. And then having instances where, I'm called sissy, queer, faggot. These words hurt when you're growing up. They're painful. And as you grow up, if you don't have a way to truly see through that, and a lot of people spend their adult life, a lot of gay men actually, try to squirm out of feeling any of that, right? Any of those words that were hurtful when they were growing up, just trying to like not feel it. And you can even become very active in politics, trying to avoid feeling something. So you're a fag, you're going to burn in hell. See, that's disempowering to not own that. Because then like, it's like, oh, they have all the power, and the mere utterance of the words is a weapon right there, and I can feel powerless to that until I own it. So I'm a fag who's going to burn in hell. See, I don't feel anything, but when I first looked at this, you can imagine the feeling that comes with that, but just sitting with it, and then it burns up. And then I recognize that the words don't have any power. After I sit with it, they have no power. So just taking the power away from someone else like that. They actually did this. There was talk in the 90s about how the gay community would re-own the word queer, which had been used derogatorily. Just own it, call yourself queer, then nobody else has the power. But the problem with that was that many people were taking on these things and then believing them, like believing the negative connotations of that in some way, like down deep, still self-loathing. Okay. So again, this would be better to truly sit with it and see its emptiness. It's much easier to own something once you've seen the emptiness of it. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're gay or not. The point is can't you think of times when you grew up, when you were bullied, when you were called names at school, when you were made to feel ugly? A comment, I remember in sixth grade, some girl said, "You have gray teeth. That's ugly." And for years, I would always like look at my teeth. See, these things impact us. Like there's something wrong with my teeth. I have to fix this, fixating on it. Just, okay, I have gray teeth and they're ugly. It's a thought. Let it be true. At first, let it be true. This is what I was going to say. At first, just assume it's true so that you don't argue with it. And then once you're resting with it, you can even take away that assumption and just rest. Still quiet, observing awareness. Are those words? You can ask that. Are those words me, the awareness that's looking, or are the words the awareness? No, they're words. All right, so stand as awareness and let those be what they are, words, and feel whatever you have to feel. It's that simple. After this video, sit for a few minutes, maybe even write down everything harmful, hateful, or hurtful that anyone has ever said to you. Like make a list, everything. Now, you may not be able to do everything, especially if you have a parent that barraged you every day, but you can get the highlights, the greatest hits, write those down, or remember them and then just go through them in this way, one by one. And don't jump off something until you felt everything with it. So it's not just about, "Oh, I'm going to do it briefly on dad. Okay, now I'm going to do it briefly on my neighbor Joe. And now, no, sit with it so that everything comes up and you stand as awareness during the process because that's where the freedom is. It's not trying to get through it quickly or making it an academic exercise. All right. I want to see if there's any comments. I'll probably do another video this morning on a different topic. Let's see if anybody has anything to say. No. So I will see you guys in a second with a different video, different topic.